Friday, and they're going to resume service on Monday. We have not heard back from American Airlines. We haven't heard anything from JetBlue, but of course we're going to watch that on social and have all that information for you as soon as it comes out. Of course, continue to share your pictures and your videos with us using the hashtag 13stormmode.
Thanks, Alicia. Get our attention with the hashtag 13stormmode. You can also send your pictures to share it at 13newsnow.com.
Some new video here from Dominion Energy. Trucks are being loaded with equipment as crews prepare for Florence. Linemen and equipment are on standby to respond to any outages. Strong winds, of course, and all of that rain could knock out power. But if the power goes out in your neighborhood, don't assume Dominion knows about that. Be the neighborhood hero. Pick up the phone. Report the outage to the number you see right there on your screen. 866-366-4357. All right, we are on rumor control. As the storm gets closer, we're seeing more and more misinformation online.
There's a lot of it out there. The Verify team is able to put one rumor to rest right now. Word is the Cape Hatteras Electric Cooperative will turn off the power when the winds reach a certain speed. While the co-op is getting in front of this one, they verify this is false. They'll keep the lights on as long as the power lines will last. And by the way, if the lights do go out, report an outage to the number on your screen. The number is 866-511-9862.
It is the calm before the storm in Sandbridge. We are keeping you safe and informed during, before, and after Florence. Stay with us. Our live coverage continues all evening long.
It's okay.
And Captain Rosen, can you get a mic check from me? Can you just count to 10 for us?
Sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Spice it up, different looks with live shots.
13 News Now continues in storm mode as a monster storm moves closer to shore. Hurricane Florence is a powerful Category 3 storm, packing devastating winds up to 120 miles per hour.
The Army releases new video from Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Soldiers there are preparing for disaster as the 82nd Airborne Division makes the call to evacuate. Thanks for staying up with us. I'm Regina Mobley.
And I'm David Allen. Normally, we would be bringing you Splitting Up Together. Instead, we're staying on the air as Hurricane Florence takes aim at the Carolinas. Tonight, we're tracking the potential for flooding in Hampton Roads and on the Outer Banks. And we're taking you to Sandbridge as neighbors make final preparations before the storm. We're also hearing from those in flood-prone areas making the difficult decision to stay. But first, Chief Meteorologist Jeff Lawson is tracking where Florence is and where it's headed.
Let's check it out with Jeff.
Yeah, and you can see it is not very far offshore by that shot that was playing there in the background. Right now, watches and warnings all up and down the East Coast. I know some of you have heard this before that have been watching, but if you're just joining us or maybe you need some clarification, the pink area, central areas of South Carolina, up through Myrtle Beach, all of North Carolina, up to the Wright Brothers Memorial Bridge under a tornado. Well, actually, we may get some tornado watches and warnings eventually on the right side of the storm, but under a hurricane warning. And then from there up to the state line, tropical storm warning. That means tropical storm force conditions of 40-mile-per-hour winds or more are likely. And in the yellow, possible tropical storm force conditions. That's why from Mobjack Bay down through Poquoson and Hampton, on down through Portsmouth, Norfolk, Chesapeake, and Virginia Beach, we have that tropical storm watch, meaning possible tropical storm force conditions. The center of the eye, again, disappeared or almost disappeared for a little while, now seems to be making ever so slight of a comeback. A closer view shows what I'm talking about. Notice how the orange color for a while was not all the way around it. Now it is starting to reform. So it might have been an eye wall replacement, but had knocked it down to 115 in terms of the miles per hour. Now probably at least holding its own and maybe even increasing ever so slightly. We'll find out during the 11 o'clock advisory. But that's Category 3. Might make it to a 4 or it could stay a 3, depending on those eye wall replacements and what exact pockets of water they hit and whether they're 84 degrees or 86 will make a difference. But let's say Category 3 as it gets, first of all, offshore by not terribly far a distance Thursday, and then during the day Thursday and Friday is sitting just offshore here or just onshore, but somewhere right about over Wilmington, over to about Camp Lejeune, and then it looked like it might drift southwest offshore, which would have kept really strong winds going. But now we think it'll be far enough inland that, yes, there will be some winds that are still strong, like hurricane force, but they'll mainly be out over the water, and it'll come inland and then be allowed to finally weaken pretty rapidly. And all the remnants get eventually, takes a while, takes 4 or 5 days, but they eventually get, sort of moved on up there into areas of the Ohio Valley. 15 to 30 inches of rain according to the American model. To our south, we're going to be in the 3 to 6 or 4 to 8 range. Notice how it cuts the heaviest rain off, though, before you get terribly far down into South Carolina. This is the European model, takes the storm another 50 miles south before turning it in. So those areas of eastern South Carolina get hammered a little bit more under the Euro scenario than under the GFS or the American model. Concerns here in Virginia, some rainfall flooding, but heaviest in South Carolina and North Carolina. Peak surge values above mean lower low water, 5 to 6.5 feet. That 5 foot is only moderate. The low end of major, though, starts at 6.5. So a little bit of a range. We do think some areas will have some major flooding. Others will have moderate. We'll detail all that coming up. And some trees down from 30 to 40 mile per hour sustained, gusting to 50.
Jeff, we'll be watching that. Thank you so much. Things are quiet on the Outer Banks, a sign of the chaos to come.
That's right. Restaurants, stores, and homes all boarded up in anticipation of Hurricane Florence. But a single grocery store is open.
And if this photo is any indication, well, it's pretty well stocked, right? Robert Boyd is live as the boards go up in Nags Head. Robert.
Yeah, everywhere you look, businesses are all boarded up. I'm standing outside of Salmonomi, is one of the more popular restaurants here in Nags Head, actually throughout the whole Outer Banks. You take a look behind me. Typically, a line out the door any given day in the summertime in September. Not today. It is all boarded up. The last meal they served today was around 2 p.m., and when they will reopen, yet to be determined. And that's pretty much how it is for all these businesses here in the Outer Banks, sitting, waiting out the storm, closing down for the time being, except for one business. The Publix grocery store in Kitty Hawk remains open at this time. In fact, it's going to be open until 10 o'clock tonight, so you've got about a half an hour left to get there if you need any last-minute groceries. They officially can shut their doors at 10. There was a constant flow of people actually going in and out of that Publix today, stocking up again on those last-minute items. And in anticipation of the crowds, the store did order extra cases of water to make sure they didn't run out. Now, we spoke with a mom who said when looking at possibly days without electricity, you have to make sure you have everything you need. But she says she'd rather be stuck in her house than in a hotel.
There's been a lot of people that think we're crazy for staying, and other moms that aren't from the area that don't understand. They just see Outer Banks on the news and they think, how could you not leave? How could you not follow the mandatory evacuation order, especially with a kid? But it's all about where you live here. We're on high ground, so we never flood. We don't, even with the extreme nature of this one, we don't think we'll flood.
Now, coming up tonight at 11, we'll hear more from these residents who have decided to ride out this storm and not agree with the evacuation. And we'll also hear from people who are having a little bit of fun with the hurricane, which is not being advised by any means, but there are people out there who are planning hurricane parties. We'll have much more on that coming up tonight at 11 o'clock. Live in Nags Head, Robert Boyd, 13 News Now.
Right, earlier this week, ships and aircraft left Naval Station Norfolk to avoid Hurricane Florence. Here to talk about how else the base is preparing is Captain Bradley Rosing, Commanding Officer of Naval Station Norfolk. Captain, thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me, David.
Talk about the preparations on the base.
So, as you know, earlier this week on Monday, we sorted about 30 ships from Naval Station Norfolk. We also made preparations over the last couple of days to evacuate about 45 aircraft. Once we got all of the ships and aircraft gone, we focused on the preparations at the installation itself, and that include much of what you're doing at your home. We loaded thousands of sandbags for distribution throughout the base. We secured many potential hazards that could be displaced by the wind. We topped off our vehicles with gas and generators and made preparations along those lines.
Except it's the world's largest Navy base.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which makes it a big task.
Certainly, but I'm confident that the preparations that we've done over the last several days have postured us for success. As you know, my number one priority is the security of the fleet, the fighter, and the family, and so the safety of our personnel and their families certainly number one on my list.
What goes into your decision to send the ships out, and what goes into your decision to bring them back?
The decision to sortie the ships is based primarily on the predicted weather and at the installation itself, as well as the sea state in the operating area if we were to sortie them. So the decision was made to get those out into the Atlantic, into an area where they're postured to weather the storm. We will bring them back once the storm passes, of course, and we are certain that the pier and the waterfront is ready to receive all the ships and their crews.
Is it a challenge to maintain military readiness when you're in a state like this?
It is certainly a challenge. Sailors have a lot on their mind, worrying about their families. But this is what we've trained for. This is what we prepare for many, many months. We talk about this well in advance of the hurricane season, and then on times like this, we get to execute it and put it into action.
What goes into trying to support military families who may be separated right now by deployments?
As you know, we ordered everyone that was in evacuation zone Alpha. The Navy ordered an evacuation of those sailors and their family members today. And while they're gone, we will use the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society for any sailors that may need special attention or additional funding.
Captain Rosen, good luck over there.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate it.
All right, sure.
Well, many people fleeing Florence's path are ending up here in Hampton Roads. Hotel managers and Chesapeake Bay phones are ringing off the hook as people try to figure out where they're going to go. We are told rooms are still available. Brian Farrell joins us now with where the closest shelters are. Brian.
Yeah, Regina, we'll head down to North Carolina to start. If you're in Currituck County and you need to head inland, Halifax Community College is the place that's recommended for you to go. Now, if you're a little bit south of that in Dare County, you'll want to go to Knightdale High School. That's opening as a shelter near Raleigh. And in Hampton Roads, Norfolk has 5 shelters available for you. They include Crossroads Elementary, Norview High School, and Southside STEM Academy. Bayview and Berkeley Community Centers are also open as shelters. They are the 2 that are pet-friendly in Norfolk. And in Virginia Beach, Kellam High School opened earlier tonight as a shelter. Several other counties and cities in the area have shelters that are available, from James City County over to the Middle Peninsula there in Gloucester County, all the way down to Chesapeake. You'll find them on 13newsnow.com and through our app. And besides those city-run and county-run shelters, the state of Virginia opened 2 in our area. One is at Christopher Newport University in Newport News. The other one's at William and Mary up in Williamsburg. And that one will hold up to 1,500 people. State troopers will be there to keep people safe. You'll find available bedding, meals, water, and snacks. You will need to bring emergency kits. If you need anything like medication, also keep that in mind. You'll have to take that. And you can bring service animals to William and Mary. You won't be able to bring pets. Of course, you'll find this information again on 13newsnow.com. And remember, download that app and you'll find it there too. David.
Brian, thanks so much. Some people are staying put. That includes neighbors at this mobile home park in Chesapeake. They're under mandatory evacuation orders, but some aren't leaving. And again, we hear this time and again from different parts of our community. Neighbors tell us they're worried about floodwaters entering their homes.
I don't know what they're thinking. I just don't want to stay and risk the flooding. Ground's already saturated, so what's going to happen after the storm?
Others are making the decision to leave. They tell us they're heading north to avoid the storm.
Attention parents, students at Williamsburg, James City County schools are heading back to school tomorrow. Administrators made that call earlier today, saying Florence's path had changed. City officials also gave the all clear since the schools won't need to be used as shelters. Now, Hurricane Florence is throwing a wrench in college football plans. Several games have been rescheduled. ODU at Charlotte will now happen tomorrow at 4 o'clock. These games, Norfolk State at Liberty, Tennessee State at Hampton, and East Carolina at Virginia Tech are all postponed. UVA versus Ohio is now Saturday at 4:30 at Vanderbilt University in Nashville. Admission is free. William and Mary versus Elon is also postponed.
President Trump is promising preparedness as Hurricane Florence barrels toward the East Coast.
We are ready. But despite that, bad things can happen when you're talking about a storm this size.
They sure can. Some people are reportedly deciding not to evacuate areas the hurricane is expected to impact. President Trump said everybody under mandatory evacuation should get out and listen to local authorities.
Senator Tim Kaine met with FEMA officials in Washington today to get an update on Hurricane Florence.
It still poses significant danger in Virginia, especially a lot of rain, flooding risks, and with rain and flooding, you could also have winds that would bring significant power outages.
Senator Kaine helped to push President Trump to issue a federal emergency declaration ahead of the storm. That declaration came on yesterday. Now, the sandbags are up as we prepare for the impact of Hurricane Florence. 13 News Now continues in storm mode with a full update from Jeff next.
Welcome back to our special coverage as we continue to track Hurricane Florence, a Category 3 hurricane that continues to spin off the southeast coastline. Now, it's not just the strong winds and heavy rain from a tropical system that you need to be concerned about. In fact, the most deadly part of a hurricane is the storm surge. Now, it's not just your normal high tide or your normal sea level that varies from day to day and place to place. It's the surge in advance of a hurricane, the abnormal rise in water as a tropical storm is approaching. So what we have are the strong winds that push the water towards the shore, just like this. And what happens, whether it's a tropical storm or a hurricane, that surge of water comes on shore. Now, it doesn't matter whether it's a tropical storm or a hurricane. All systems have that. And depending on the slope of the continental shelf, the land under the water's surface, and the shape of the coastline, that can directly impact the significance of the storm surge. So whether it's 3 feet, 6 feet, 9 feet or more, water has a lot of force behind it. As a matter of fact, 1 cubic yard of water, that's 3 feet by 3 feet and 3 feet deep, weighs almost a ton. 2,000 pounds, and that's the force that is pushing the water towards the land. Now, if that's not enough, all of that water that comes ashore has floating debris in it, floats them and jets them, trees, boats, and cars, and all of this debris acts like battering rams with everything pushing ashore. That battering ram is going to eliminate anything in its path. So remember, you hide from the wind, but you run from the water, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Evan, for that great explanation and graphics. Again, as we look at this storm, nothing has really changed here lately. Yesterday, during the afternoon, we told you well in advance of all the changes that they were going to have to change it and curl it to the south. And several hours later, they began to follow suit. And by today, they were on to, again, that sharp turn that we had talked about yesterday. Right now, the leading edge actually already showing up. We've had it earlier today. The very, very latest, most outer bands, again, starting to come on shore is hardly anything, just some very light showers. In case you're just joining us or you need, again, some clarification, from Mobjack Bay, not Gloucester Matthews, only the bay, back down through Poquoson and Hampton, and then Norfolk, Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, all under, again, Norfolk, Chesapeake, Portsmouth, Virginia Beach, all under a tropical storm watch. That means maybe we get sustained winds of 40 miles per hour. The orange area here, our northeast North Carolina counties, means a warning for tropical storm force winds. And then south of that, we have the hurricane warning, means likely to have at least hurricane gusts in the northern section, if not sustained winds. Meanwhile, you say, what's STS? Subtropical storm Joyce has formed. Believe it or not, out there in the North Atlantic, not going to bother anybody. It's helping to pull Helene to the north. We had talked about that for several days. Isaac not doing anything, although way over in the edge, didn't label it, but Kirk is likely to form. And that's actually one of the reasons that we're having a little bit of an influence, we think, here. Mainly, it's the high pressure blocking over the areas of Ohio. But as you can see, the storm lost its eye for a little bit, and now it is starting to come back. We can actually take a little bit better look and watch. It gets obscured for a little while, and now it is starting to fill in. This is just another one with a little bit different color bank on it. And you can see starting to get that eye looking a little bit less ragged. So I have a feeling they may be upping this. It always doesn't translate into more power or more strength for the winds immediately. So they might not up it as of the 11 o'clock advisory, but that is at least a hint that the storm has stopped its weakening trend and is at least holding steady, if not maybe starting to think about getting more organized. So Category 3, 115, gusting to 150. It is still a long way away, but it's getting closer and closer. By tomorrow afternoon, sitting offshore with the rain bands already working their way onto areas of the coastline and continuing, even some of them up around us. Then Friday, it does not move very much at all. Still likely to be around a Category 3. Maybe if we get lucky, it'll bring up enough cool water and there's enough influence from the land to knock it down to a 2. That would be great news. Certainly is possible. And then from there, we bring it to Category 1 status, hopefully inland, because if it's near the coastline, it could still be a Category 2. So the farther inland it is, the more the winds will be breaking down just that much more quickly, and then the remnants sweep off to the north and the east. The range of tides, next tide cycle or two, should be generally minor flooding, And then into Thursday night, Friday morning, generally minor, maybe the upper end of minor, right near moderate. This is the one we're worried about. Anywhere from upper levels of minor to right on the border of moderate and major. That is Friday at 1:28 p.m. Could be somewhat similar on Saturday. We'll again go over this in much more detail and break it down, not just for Sewell's Point coming back in a few minutes, but for right now, back to the desk.
All right, Jeff, thanks so much. We're answering your questions as our storm mode coverage continues. Coverage. Remember these key points. Florence is a Category 3 storm, powerful. It's projected to come ashore in about 24 hours near Wilmington, some 270 miles south of Norfolk.
And that 24 hours will see the weather deteriorating to dangerous conditions well before it officially makes landfall. Here in Hampton Roads, concerns over flooding meant an hours-long wait for sandbags in Newport News.
We're using high-tech tools to bring you an accurate idea of what you can expect over these next few days.
Our team is ready to bring you whatever Florence brings us. From Virginia Beach to the Outer Banks, we're keeping you covered.
And for the latest on what's going on right now, we begin with Chief Meteorologist Jeff Lawson.
Yeah, first, again, in about 24 hours, the leading edge of some of those heavy rain bands are going to start to get in. It actually won't make landfall for about another 36 hours or even maybe a little bit more than that. Right now, tons of watches and warnings all over the place, up and down from Virginia all the way almost to Georgia, but not quite. And you can see here officially in our area from the state line up through the interior south side, including Poquoson and Hampton, and then over the Monitor Merrimack and right over to Hampton and Poquoson, as well as Mobjack Bay, we are under a tropical storm watch. That means watch out, watch Channel 13, watch 13 News now, because we might have to deal with sustained tropical storm force winds. Keyword might. Areas where we feel a little more confident that we're going to get tropical storm force winds. That's why this orange area from the state line south to the Albemarle Sound, that's actually a tropical storm warning. So watch, warning, a little more heightened, and then a hurricane warning from areas of Nags Head on to the south, all because of this system right here, Florence. You can see it does not look nearly as textbook as it did earlier. You can barely see the eye. Hence, the wind's down even more, down to 115 now. Every little bit helps. 150, though, still with some of the gusts. It still has a chance to strengthen some for about 24 hours with a lot of really warm water sitting out there. But as it slows up and gets closer to the coastline, there's some cooler water down below the Gulf Stream, that's shallower layer. So as a result, we think a little what we call upwelling will occur and some wind shear as it starts to slow down. The high pressure is going to be like, no, stay away. And that's going to keep it right near the shoreline. So we're hoping it will even weaken a little bit more. And then it takes a curve somewhere down the coastline. Maybe it's inland by 20, 30 miles. That'd be good news because it would weaken a lot more quickly than if it slides right offshore and then works its way inland. So that's still one thing we'll have to pin down a little bit. Eventually, the remnants get caught up and move on. So what kind of tides here in Sewell's Point? Well, pretty much all the area other than the Outer Banks, whether you're talking peninsula, you can all base the numbers pretty close to this. They'll be very, very similar. Generally minor tidal flooding the next couple of high tide cycles. By tomorrow night, Thursday night into Friday morning, 1 o'clock in the morning, early Friday, we're going to have anywhere from the low end of minor up to the high end of minor, maybe even touching on moderate. Moderate begins at 5.5 feet. We think will be generally about maybe 5 to 5.25, but that's the range. The big question, Friday afternoon, we think anywhere from 5 feet, which would put us in the minor category, probably up in the moderate category, about 5.5 to 6, and maybe as high as 6.5. It depends on how quickly that storm either weakens or whether it stays just offshore as an even more powerful storm. Pretty low astronomical tide coming up early Saturday, so that should go down a bit. And then Saturday, we thought that was a little low, so that's probably going to come up and maybe get into moderate again as well. So it's going to approach Wilmington as a major hurricane. Biggest impacts north and South Carolina, but still life-threatening rains there, but still some significant impacts here, and that's what we'll discuss coming up.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Now to the Outer Banks. Tomorrow morning, access to Dare County will be restricted. That is according to county leaders.
Neighbors and visitors are being told to get out now. Those defying that evacuation order are hunkering down and preparing for the worst. Stores are boarding up as tourists and their money leave town and Florence moves in. Now time will tell how storms will treat the Outer Banks.
13 News Now reporter Robert Boyd is live in Nags Head tonight with the latest, where at hour 24, the weather is already starting to change.
Well, Regina and David, walking across the dunes here in the Outer Banks, you see a lot of vegetation moving back and forth with the wind. But you know who isn't moving because of all this wind and rain and the hurricane? A lot of the local residents here. They're staying put. You take a look at these houses behind me, a lot of lights on. People are home, refusing to leave. They're going to ride out this storm. And many of these folks I spoke with said, basically, as long as you're prepared, they believe that they're going to be okay. Now, we spoke with one man who his biggest concern was just his trailer. He was moving it underneath his garage area, underneath his deck, to make sure it didn't blow through the neighborhood, causing any damage or injuries. We also spoke with another man whose big fear was the canal in the back of his house, rising up so high that water gets into the first floor. He has 3 kids he's trying to protect, and he said they have enough food and water to last them a week, and he said you just have to assume you're going to lose power.
We're going to get nasty winds, we're going to get flooding, but we're not going to get the absolute brunt of it. It doesn't matter. It's such a big storm. We're going to get a nasty blow.
But despite his analysis, a nasty blow, that man is staying right put, and so are a lot of other residents. So that means a lot of those residents were stocking up today on last-minute food and water items that will come in, obviously come in handy in the next week or so. Now, the Publix grocery store, as far as we know, is the only grocery store still open right now on the Outer Banks. We were there earlier today, spoke with a lot of people, again, getting water, getting those last-minute items that they would need, and we'll hear from some of those folks coming up tonight at 9:30. Live in Nags Head, Robert Boyd, 13 News Now.
All right now, ferries out of Ocracoke are no longer running. NCDOT tweeted out this picture of the last ferry off the island. More than 2,100 people evacuated by ferry. Another 1,000 cars were carried off of Ocracoke. And by the way, NCDOT suspended Knott's Island ferries earlier today. While the storm is tracking south, their county is still bracing for Florence's impact.
Joining us now on the phone is Drew Pearson. He is the Emergency Management Coordinator for the region. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, a hurricane warning and a storm surge warning are in effect for Dare County. What does this mean for residents and tourists?
Well, it means we're expecting 4 to 6 feet of storm surge across the Outer Banks of North Carolina, life-threatening storm surge. I noticed people have stayed. We know that. I think they're lucky that the storm made a turn. We could have been having much worse conditions on the Outer Banks, and we're just happy that it's turning, but the threat is still here. We're still expecting 4 to 6 feet of storm surge, high winds, lots of rain, and flooding. So I'm glad people are hunkering down and staying in place that did stay, but we still have a large threat here on the Outer Banks.
Drew, as this storm begins to move on to us, what's your biggest concern for that region?
Well, it's that storm surge down on Hatteras Island. We could have some overwashes and breaches of our roads. I just hope people that did stay in place, shelter in place, and stay aware of the situation, what's going on around them. We're ready to help them if we can, but if the conditions are terrible, we may not be able to get to them. So I'm glad that they're got their supplies, but we're worried about them, and we wish they had evacuated, but we're ready to help them if we can.
If someone is having an emergency, what should they do? Can they call 911? Will there be a response?
Our Emergency Operations Center, our 911 center is fully dispatched. Our first responders are poised to respond if they can, if the conditions allow them to safely do that. We hope those calls are not made, but we're ready to help if we can.
Thank you so much for joining us, Drew Pearson.
All right, Florence is now a Category 3, but it is still shaping up to be a monster of a storm. Let's look live at Wrightsville Beach. Minutes ago, a mandatory evacuation went into effect as the Carolinas brace for what many are calling the storm of a lifetime.
Elsewhere in Wrightsville Beach, businesses are boarding up. This department store is once again protecting itself with boards that have been used in every storm for many years.
Savannah Levins picks up our coverage live from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, as the worries continue to mount. Savannah.
Yeah, you hear that right now? Absolutely nothing. It's dead silent. It's a ghost town. This area has been under mandatory evacuation for about a day now, and it seems people are heeding that warning. I mean, take a look. People boarding up their businesses. The governor actually mandated that businesses close by 5 p.m. today, so it does seem like people are really taking that to heart. I've only seen a few families who decided to stay and weather out this storm, but as we're seeing these latest models, it seems like people are getting even a little more concerned. As we drove in today, we were the only ones inbound to Myrtle Beach, I can tell you, but the roads out, packed, gas gone. So certainly an issue there. And another issue is, like, you think about Myrtle Beach being a beach town and they should be prepared as structurally for things like this, but really doesn't get a lot of rain. I mean, you're talking Myrtle Beach gets about 51 inches of rainfall a year. That's like an inch per week. So if we're getting the 3 feet of rain that we're expecting from this storm system, that's the equivalent of 8 months worth of rain right here in like 2 or 3 days. So certainly a big concern for people who live here, concerned about their homes and businesses as well. We are going to be hunkered down here, of course, bringing you updates. But for now, reporting live in Myrtle Beach, I'm Savannah Levins. I'll send it back to you in studio.
All right, be safe down there. Ghost town, really, in Myrtle Beach tonight. Let's take another look at Florence. The National Hurricane Center will release new data in their next advisory. We'll have it. That's due out at 11 tonight.
We are helping you stay ahead of this storm. Storm mode coverage continues when we come back.
But on the backside of the storm, if the wind turns south, the water can come in just as quick and flood Sandbridge Road and make it impassable very quickly.
Stay with us on 13 News Now at 11 as we talk to residents here in Sandbridge who have decided to bunker down and prepare for this storm. Live in Virginia Beach, I'm Megan Purrier, 13 News Now.
All right, a travel warning. Several airlines have canceled flights already at Norfolk International Airport. The airport tweeted Frontier flights to and from Norfolk for Friday are canceled. They say their service will resume Sunday. Allegiant Air canceled flights for tomorrow as well. That airline will resume on Monday. And Southwest flights for tomorrow are also canceled in Norfolk.
Virginia Governor Ralph Northam and his team are staying on top of the storm.
Earlier this evening, the governor gave an update urging everyone to stay vigilant despite the shift in the forecast.
We expect tropical storm conditions such as high winds, tidal storm surge, and severe rainfall across the entire state. For that reason, we are maintaining the mandatory evacuation order in Zone A, which includes the low-lying coastal areas of Hampton Roads, the Middle Peninsula, the Northern Neck, and the Eastern Shore. If you're already out of harm's way, please stay there.
The governor also says he is prepared to send resources to North Carolina and South Carolina if the Commonwealth doesn't get hit as hard. Hurricane Florence is expected to dump up to 3 feet of rain on the Carolina coast.
It could mean big problems for areas in its path that don't usually receive much rainfall. Take Myrtle Beach as an example. The city averages about 51 inches of rainfall per year, or about an inch per week. If that area takes on 3 feet of rain, forecasters are talking about the equivalency of more than 8 months worth of rain in the next 3 to 4 days.
Call to evacuate on the South Carolina coast is still strong tonight. South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster made another plea to people near the shore, telling them to get out.
With all the information we're getting from around the world on this hurricane, I can assure you that what we are telling you here is the very best information available. Point number one, if you are in a evacuation zone, and those you can see them by going to the website, if you are in one of those evacuation zones in these counties, you need to leave now. Those zones are in Charleston County, Georgetown County, Dorchester County, Horry County, and Berkeley County.
Governor says more than 300,000 people have already left the evacuation zones. People are trying to get away from the coast as Florence inches even closer with the passing seconds. Let's take you live to I-20. You can see most of the traffic on the roads is moving in one direction. That would, of course, be away from the coast.
The National Hurricane Center made some changes this year to help improve communication with the public. First, adjustments to the hurricane track map. The cone of uncertainty is smaller to give the public a better idea of where the center of the storm is going. Experimental wind maps are now official. These help show when strong winds will arrive at a given location. Finally, advisories now include potential impacts further in advance.
All right, Virginia Task Force 2 is active and ready to go. Last night, members came to Virginia Beach from all over the region. One dog handler even came from New York. Right now, they're waiting for orders.
Obviously, we'll take any challenge that happens, but we're leaning towards a water event, mostly flooding.
Task Force 2 is a federal team, but a state asset. They're terrific. We expect they'll likely stay in Virginia when responding to anything Hurricane Florence throws our way.
The sandbags are up as we prepare for the impact of Hurricane Florence. 13 News Now continues in storm mode with a full update from Jeff coming up next.
right, welcome back, everybody. Continuing to track Florence. Again, an update will be coming in fairly soon. We've been showing this leading edge. The very first rain band came on shore a little bit earlier today with a couple sprinkles. It's long gone. This is the second one working its way through. Again, just a couple of sprinkles. Hurricane warning, Nags Head south, hurricane watch up to the state line, and then a tropical storm watch north of that. Just for parts of our area, not the eastern shore, not the middle peninsula, northern neck, but from Mobjack Bay back down through the southern Chesapeake Bay, continuing on down here through Portsmouth, Norfolk, Poquoson, Hampton, Virginia Beach, and Chesapeake. So the storm system continuing, again, to be a very powerful storm. It has weakened a little bit from yesterday, but it's showing some signs to me that that has leveled off a little bit, maybe even some slight intensification. Might not show up with the winds at the ground just yet, but I think it's starting to hold its own again. So winds down to 115, but gusts up to 150. That's 335 miles southeast of Wilmington, North Carolina, or 370 miles east-southeast of Myrtle Beach. Continuing to work its way, again, northwesterly at 16. By tomorrow afternoon, I don't know, what's that, maybe 80 miles offshore, and then slowly tomorrow evening into the overnight and early morning on Friday, working very slowly toward the coastline as a Category 3 most likely. There's still a hope, a little bit of a possibility that as that high starts to push it the other direction, some wind shear could keep those strongest winds maybe in the southeast quadrant. I've seen that happen in my 40 years of covering these things a number of times, so I'm hoping that maybe that happens, and some of the upwelling could also weaken it a little bit. And then if it's offshore, well within this cone of uncertainty, it'd probably be a Cat 2, but we're saying Cat 1, and if it's inland, it could be even weaker than that, just a tropical storm. So the current thinking, we'll see if that changes here at 11 o'clock, would be a Category 1. Massive amounts of rain here, and then the storm eventually getting pulled along finally by a cold front and leaving. What can we expect? Southern Outer Banks, the peak would be late Thursday through Friday. Sustained winds 60 to 75 or more, gusts to 90 or more, rainfall 5 to 10, major to extreme flooding and a major overall impact. The Northern Outer Banks peaking Thursday and Friday with east winds at 30 to 45, gusting to 60. That's why you're not under that hurricane warning, but a tropical storm warning. 4 to 8 inches, moderate to maybe some major flooding, and obviously moderate to major impacts. Inland North Carolina, 35 to 40 winds, gusting to 55, and then moderate flooding with 4 to 8 inches of rain. Here we go with inland Hampton roads. This includes the peninsula, middle peninsula, even the eastern shore. 30 to 40 mile per hour winds, gusting to 45, 3 to 6 inches of rain, moderate impacts overall, and moderate tidal flooding with a few exceptions. We think a few different areas could get up to the edge of major, and we'll go over those coming up in a little while. And then finally, coastal Hampton roads, 30 to 40, gusting to 50, 3 to 6, not a lot different, moderate to definitely, we think, in 1 or 2 spots where just the wind is perfect to go into some of the various creeks, etc. We think some of the low end of major, and then overall impact would be moderate. With a little more information, I think it's on the winds again, is Evan Stewart.
That's right. We've got a lot of folks who've been asking for us to time things out, let you know when the wind will start to pick up. So made this graphic, put it together for you. If you look on the left side, find the city or the community that's closest to you. We've sort of listed them from north to south, from Williamsburg down towards Cape Hatteras. The time is there at the top as well. Thursday, 8 a.m. Notice we're already seeing winds tomorrow. 30 miles per hour, 40 once you get into Edenton and Elizabeth City, and to Hatteras. Could see winds already close to 60 miles per hour. As we go through the afternoon, notice those winds picking up. We could be talking about winds close to hurricane force or a little bit higher down towards Cape Hatteras, even into tomorrow afternoon. Northeastern North Carolina in the 40s to 50s and around 40 miles per hour for much of Hampton Roads, 30s up across the peninsula. So even with 40 mile per hour winds, that would be enough to maybe knock down some trees, certainly across northeastern North Carolina, especially as wet as it's been. Think back to Isabel, not comparing the storm to it in that way, but just the ground was so wet before the storm hit that sometimes these trees just can't take some of the stronger winds that we see with the storm. As we continue to go through 11 p.m., we're looking at those winds at Hatteras around 70 miles per hour. And then as we go into Friday, that's when those winds should start to come down, Jeff.
Yeah, and I think mentioning Isabel in terms of the tree damage is important because with that storm, we were the very, very upper end of tropical storm force strength. We were 60, 65 miles per hour sustained, and that's why we had tens of thousands of trees down. If we only get 40-mile-per-hour winds, we will have quite a few, I think some trees down around here, but it would not be to the extent of Isabel, even though both of them would have ended up being tropical storm force winds. So that is something we're going to have to pay close attention to. Every 10 miles per hour we go up in terms of the wind would make a big difference. We'll be back, obviously, very, very shortly with a lot more information. And I don't know, in about half an hour, hopefully we'll get that update.
All right, thanks, Jeff.
We'll be looking for that, Jeff. Thanks so much. We'll set your DVRs. We have a programming note.
That's right. We saw your emails and nice comments on social media last night. So last night's Bachelor in Paradise finale will air this Sunday, 2 to 4 p.m.
13 News Now continues in storm mode when we return.
What is my what? I'm sorry. Tweets again? Yeah? Okay.
you.